Welcome back. Workers' Day commemorations this afternoon unfolded against a backdrop of increasing poverty, inequality and unemployment. And the ANC government is being blamed for creating one of the most unequal societies in the world. Do workers have anything to celebrate nearly 3 decades into democracy? To help us answer this and more, I'm joined by Trevor Ngwane. He's director at the University of Johannesburg's Centre for Sociological Research and Practice. Thank you very much, Mr. Ngwane, for your time this evening. In your recent opinion piece entitled Labour Rethink on ANC Pact Overdue, you talk about a native elite during the colonial era and later the ANC petty bourgeoisie or elite separate from the working class. Do you think these structures still exist today within the ruling party?
Yes, thank you for having me. Oh, yes. Remember, we are living in a capitalist economy. Actually, South Africa, it's racial capitalism. So apartheid was a form of capitalism. So the population, including the black population, is divided into the middle class, the working class. These days, even the bourgeoisie, people like Patrice Motsepe, and President Ramaphosa. So those divisions still exist. And of course, because of apartheid, they are very much racialized.
Do you think those structures within the ANC and within the country are aimed at trying to perpetuate their own privilege?
Yes. So if you look at my article, I start by looking at the history of the ANC. So originally, it was a group of the first educated African people in South Africa who came together. And then over time, especially in the 50s, there was the so-called turn to the masses, the realization that for this petty bourgeoisie, this black middle class, to make it, they needed the power of ordinary people, of the workers. And then during the struggle against apartheid, the ANC made an alliance with the South African Communist Party, mainly because the South African Communist Party received support from the Soviet Union, from the communists, but also because the South African Communist Party was willing to postpone the struggle for socialism, which is the struggle of the working class. It agreed that the struggle against apartheid must first be a struggle for democracy and only later for socialism. So basically, what has happened in the new South Africa is that the ANC petty bourgeoisie, has become an aspirant black bourgeoisie. They now want to be the big bosses, to own mines, own factories, own companies. And then increasingly, they are using the working class as voting cattle, cannon fodder. So that old attitude of disdain, looking down upon workers is back. They don't care about the masses. They only care about themselves.
So you frame these elite Africans as having disparate goals to those of organized labor. And as we observed Workers' Day today, how are those goals, disparate goals, still evident? And that's on the backdrop of austerity measures, public sector wage freezes, anti-strike laws.
Yes. So during apartheid, there was a coming together of the interests of the middle class, the black middle class, the petty bourgeoisie, and the working class. But of course, on certain points, everyone was against, racism of the apartheid state, especially in 1948, when the National Party took over. it just said all blacks, are bad, call them the K word, etc. Yeah, but now with freedom, with democracy, we see now the divisions, the differences between the interests of the black petty bourgeoisie and, of course, the aspirant black bourgeoisie from the working class. A good example, with all due respect, I'm not trying to be personal, but remember our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, was a leader. He was the founder of the National Union of Mine Workers. But later, with democracy, he became a mine owner. So you can see how these interests are now diverging. He's now a boss, and then the people he organized, they are now his servants. So this is what is happening throughout South Africa, where the black petty bourgeoisie, who have become an aspirant black bourgeoisie, are increasingly having interests which are not only different from those of the working class, but they are opposed. Indeed, the ANC the ANC government. It's leading the attack on workers. I can give you many examples. They have passed anti-strike laws. There are so many things they've done. Marikana, they sent police to shoot down striking mine workers.
Where do we go as South Africans from here to try and attain a better life for all, for the working class?
So the issue with workers, working class politics, is based on solidarity. An injury to one is an injury to all. Number two, Karl Marx believed that if those who are exploited took power and ran the government, it will mean that no one will be oppressed or exploited, because the oppression comes from exploitation. So I think that if the working class were to take power, have their own political party, I think most of the problems facing South Africa would disappear, including, by the way, the problems of the middle class, both black and white. So I really believe that the socialist vision, is the one which can solve our problems.
Looking at the situation at the moment in the tripartite alliance, where there seems to be quite a bit of contestation, if that's the right word, the SACP saying that they are looking to contest next year's election against the ANC if that tripartite alliance is not reconfigured. How do you see the socialist agenda in South Africa being supported in the next 12 months?
Well, unfortunately, the SACP is not socialist at all, because remember, over time, like I explained, they decided to prioritize the interests of the black petty bourgeoisie. They made an alliance with the ANC, which means their agenda of socialism was pushed aside. They agreed to push their own program aside in order to support the African nationalism, pro-capitalist nationalism of the ANC. So you must not believe them when they talk about contesting against the ANC. They will never do it. And even if they do it, if they win, they will give those votes back to the ANC, unfortunately.
Thank you very much for your insights. That was Trevor Ngwane from the University of Johannesburg Centre for Sociological Research and Practice.